says. I'm just going to use my lawyer voice. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
As always, we begin our Board of Education meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. For years, the board members have been reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, but we thought over the last year or so, we let our students that were here, our young folks, lead us, as they will be in the very near future. We have a student from School Without Walls. Ma'am, what's your name?
Seth Jemison.
And she was on our Black History contest, Jeopardy contest. Let's give her a round of applause. So I'd ask that you follow her in the statement of the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag in the United States of America, from the republic from which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We are often reminded of the schools that are struggling in our district, but since this young lady got up here, and I think her principal was here a few minutes ago. She's still here? Yeah. That is an exceptional school, School Without Walls. Yeah, that's right. And we don't, you know, we frequently highlight certain schools that are supposed to be the good schools. We have a lot of good schools in this community. And the principal is, stand up.
Owens.
Ms. Owens, stand up. I want to go over to the mic for a minute. This is all impromptu. Let's give her a round of applause. This is one of the schools we really don't talk enough about. So you could just describe, she wasn't expecting to do this. It's all impromptu. I just want folks to know we got a lot of good schools out here. Well, you want to describe, Ms. Owen, your schools? For example, what was your graduation rate last year?
Our graduation rate last year was 86%.
86%.
Number one in the district.
Number one in the district.
Really? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah, that's right, that's right. Yeah, oh yeah, look at that. All right. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
Can I say a couple words? Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about your school.
Okay.
This is your opportunity to pitch it to the community because
Well,
you're on TV.
anybody that knows me knows that I can talk about School Without Walls forever because it is deeply embedded in my heart. I love my school. We have excellent teachers. We have fabulous students, and we honor each and every student's individuality. We use the community as our learning resource. Our kids have a 350-hour graduation requirement of community service that they have to complete. They need 25.5 credits in order to graduate. They are challenged to do a series of performance-based assessments before they can graduate. They have to stand up and present their findings, for example, in science of a research project that they have to conduct where they design an experiment, carry out the experiment, write it up in a scientific method, and they have to present their findings to a committee of 2 teachers and 1 outside community rater. And so we are quite rigorous. We work on building the entire student, not just the student academically. The social emotional piece is very big in our school. And we work on our community every single day. And we have a 0% suspension rate. So that's all.
Thank you, Ms. Owens.
But I have to say that I'm very proud of School Without Walls. I'm very proud of the gains that we have made. And I want to thank not only the Rochester School Board, specifically Mrs. Elliott, for supporting us, and also my colleagues from other schools. Thank you guys for being there for me when I need to be lifted up. Thank you.
Mr. President, I just also want to thank you for highlighting School Without Walls. It is the school that I'm the liaison to, and I'm very proud of the work that Dr. Owens does at School Without Walls. And what I most appreciate about School Without Walls, it is really a community. It really is a community. And what does the African proverb says? It takes the village to raise a child and to raise a family. And they really resonate that over at School Without Walls. The leadership is wonderful. You know, the leadership is wonderful. She recognizes just how difficult this work is, and the teachers there recognize just how difficult this work is, but they get it done. And I really would like for her at some point to be a coach for some of the other schools, because on some levels we're not getting it. You know, we got this report, I understand, that the governor's put out about failing schools, so we're still not getting it. But we've got some examples, and one is School Without Walls. And so I just wanted to congratulate the students who did a marvelous job with Jeopardy. Really want to congratulate them. They'll win next year. They definitely will win next year. And just keep up the good work for Principal Owens as well as the remaining staff and students. Thank you so very much.
As Vice President Elliott pointed out and as Principal Owens pointed out, we have a lot of good schools and even more good people working for our district. I see a lot of them in here today. Thanks for attending. I know some of you have comments to make, but I sense that you are very supportive of your colleagues who happen to be on the agenda today. So thank you for attending today. So let's move on with the business of the board. The first thing we have to do is accept the minutes of our previous meetings. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. President.
It's been moved and seconded by Commissioner Campos. Was that you? All right. Sure. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We are next moving on to our recognition portion of our program. Vice President Elliott will present the I Believe Award. Just as she's making her way to the podium, all these pictures that you see in front, about 13 months ago, we had pictures that were up there for at least 5-6 years, and they were kids who had graduated from previous classes. This board decided we were going to do something different. So every other month, we recognize students and staff members who have made a difference in this community. Today, we're recognizing a student and a staff person through our I Believe Award, and this is how it works. The student is recognized by administration for their progress or their academic success, and then the student, before today's meeting, is asked to identify an adult within his or her building that believed in them. Thus, it's called I Believe. So that person could be a cafeteria lady, it could be a principal, it could be a teacher, it could be any caring adult in that building who believed in them. Next month, stay tuned, we will present what we call the Yes We Can Award. And that award is given to whole schools who have made progress in terms of outcomes. So, Vice President Elliott.
Thank you, President White. This is another one of my schools, and school that I'm looking to see great results from, the Young Men's Leadership Academy. Tonight we recognize 11th grade student Karen Love for, am I pronouncing that right? Karen or Kareem? Kyron. All right, thank you. For his outstanding scholarship, leadership, and service to fellow students at the Leadership Academy for Young Men. Kyron, would you come forward, please, to be recognized? Besides being an active member of the track team, Kyron participates in the Elevate Club to provide academic assistance to students and also serves as a mentor to a younger student in the school. Kyron identified his teacher, Mr. Oivan. Okay. Mr. O as his inspiration because Mr. O's way of organizing instruction while also allowing students to conduct portions of the lessons. In this way, students are invested in their own learning while developing enhanced leadership skills. Isn't that wonderful? That's what it's about. For his role in encouraging Kyron's leadership and love for learning, we would also like to recognize Mr. O with the I Believe Award. Would you come up? And I am so sorry. Oh, God.
Shantadate Oi Panith, refugee from Laos.
This is where repetition comes in practice, Would you like to say a few words? Say a few words?
Hello. I said hello. Hello. That's much better, much better. 4 years ago, Wakili started this school as an epiphany, and he drafted me, and we had a vision that the shot report was wrong. That's just numbers. All I know is negativity from the numbers I hear about Rochester, but what I see in the classroom, 5 classrooms of the 9% black male graduation rate and the 10% Hispanic male graduation rate, all I see is potential. This young man I've known now since he was a freshman, and he puts my belief in young black men that they're more than just a number. They're somebody that can be great. He's achieved greatness. By him achieving greatness, he makes me look even better, because I'm pretty handsome. But the Leadership Academy for Young Men has a vision. And I'm sure most of my colleagues in this room and all the other schools in Rochester have the same vision. And that's to be great. And that's what we're going to do. Who? All right. I say who? That's much better.
Just one other thing, Mr. President. I think I recall, if I'm not mistaken, and Principal Wakili can help me, I was in the classroom when this one young guy got up and was just, you know, I mean, he said something really horrible. The way in which Mr. O handled that situation was phenomenal. Was absolutely phenomenal. And somebody else in the class, I don't know, it may have been you, but somebody else in the class, you know, sort of apologized for the gentleman and saying, well, you know, he just acts like that all the time. You were trying to teach a lesson.
Right, and I picked him on purpose.
Right.
Can I tell the story?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, since you gave it back the podium, here I am. I'm a history teacher, the best subject in the world, thank you very much. And I'm teaching about McCarthyism. For my fellow adults that forgot about McCarthyism, because you haven't been in high school for a while, it was during the Red Scare. And McCarthyism, my boy, Senator McCarthy had a list of communists that weren't communists. And he falsely accused everyone. So that day, a phone got stolen, and in every class, I falsely accused one student of stealing the phone. One kid cried in front of his classmates. So here comes Vice President Elliott and Wakili. You're like, this is perfect. I'm like, you stole the phone, and here they are. They're going to arrest you. Wow. Blah, blah, blah. And he runs out the classroom. Wakili runs after him. I'm like, no, Ms. Elliott, wait, there's more. And then I teach them that, well, Senator McCarthy falsely accused everyone. You thought that reaction was bad. Imagine losing your life and your career. So every kid in that class now knows that Senator McCarthy falsely accused everyone because Mr. O falsely accused that boy. I got 1,000 more, and I'm pretty sure we all have 1,000 stories of stories just like that. That's why we teach in the city.
All right.
Thank you. And those are the kinds of teachers that we need to have that kind of energy and really bring lessons and history to life. So thank you so very much. You want to say a few words?
Yeah,
Come on.
I'm not really a group speaker, so kind of bear with me. But honestly, if I wouldn't end up in the Leadership Academy, I probably wouldn't have never gotten this award because honestly, before I came to the school, I said I didn't want to go there, and everybody had opinions about it. But honestly, this is probably the best school I could have ended up in out of any other school because it teaches you so much stuff, and while you're at the school, you learn a lot, and it's like it has like a brotherhood inside of the school, and you learn a lot from other people inside the school, and it's really a good school, and it's kind of I don't know what else to say. Thank my mom.
Can his mom stand up and
No,
other families?
Mom, come on up, Mom.
They want you to come up.
Come on up.
They want you to come up. President wants you to come up.
Come on up. Let's give Mom a bigger round of applause. Nice job, man. And Mom, would you take the mic and just tell us the secret of your success? Go ahead. And for my colleagues, I'm going to give up my time in the President's Report. This is all important stuff. Go ahead.
Hi, Kyron he's just always been a good kid. No problems out of him. I'm very proud of him. He's a good role model for my other children that I have. So I'm grateful for the school that he attends and everybody that's a part of his life.
Thank you very much.
So, Mr. President, thank you so very much. Thank you.
All right, we're going to alter, with my colleagues' permission, we're going to alter the agenda a bit. We have a student representative, and he needs to get back home to do some work. So we're going to let him do his report right now, with your permission. Go ahead.
Thank you again. Hello, everyone. The Student Leadership Congress and I have recently been delegating roles within our ranks to achieve multiple goals at once. One of them recently being working in the community and developing those relationships with youth-run programs. Myself, I worked and collaborated with a local youth group called YVOV, which is an acronym for Youth Voice One Vision. I collaborated with them to reach out to students in and outside of the classroom because I personally believe that we, as a community in and outside of the schools, there shouldn't be as much of a separation as I feel like there is. And one of the biggest flaws is that there is not as large a network as there should be, which is something that the Congress is working on establishing between the students of the district, and then hopefully working into making the network expand further than students and into teachers and into faculty members and other officials in the district. Additionally, recently was the conclusion of the Phase 1 initiatives to redevelop our schools, the School World of Inquiry, which is my high school. We finally returned to our building on University Ave earlier this week on Monday. It is a beautiful building, and we definitely do enjoy our new location, and we are very glad that we have the opportunity. 6 years ago, we were told by the Board of Education that our school and our model was successful and that they wanted to invest in us. So now further down the line, it is great to see that that was followed through with, and we really do appreciate it as a school. So a lot of the members here were members when that happened, so if we could please give them a round of applause, it would mean the world to my school. Additionally, during our transitionary period, we attended Franklin campus for 2.5 years, and while we were there were some challenges that we had. And as we are the Phase 1, there will be other phases and other students that will be put into other locations, and there are effects of that I would like to point out. One of them is that as a school, your community does change when you are moved to a different location, and you are not able to necessarily do what you were used to. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, as at my school, we were able to really reevaluate ourselves by having the opportunity to step back and say, what is a world of inquiry? And we are currently developing better policies that bridge the gap between students and teachers and other members of the faculty. And I can say that it's working out very well, and I look forward to what we develop. Additionally, I would like to thank everyone here for attending and for the event we had earlier with celebrating Black History Month. I know we had many people who worked on that, and it seems amazing that we had so much support for that. And a round of applause to the schools that attended in the competition. And additionally, I would like, if you don't mind me getting on my soapbox, to talk about my opinion on what we can do in this country to work on our activism. As Commissioner Elliott mentioned earlier, that we still do have a lot of work to do. We have made steps in a mile's worth of efforts we need to take. And one of them being that, in my opinion, as activists in our country, I think there's something we need to adapt our mindset. One of the a common phrase I hear is we look at issues like racism and prejudice and we say, that is the infection that is killing our country. That is what we need to rid ourselves of. And I believe that's a flaw in mindset. Unfortunately, our country was built on ideas that were very racist and very prejudiced. Unfortunately, when we look at it from that perspective, you have to realize that racism isn't the infection as much as it is the homeostasis of our country. So activism isn't necessarily the cure as much as it is the infection. And that's something we need to be. We need to infect and mutate our country to become something better. But one of the flaws of that is when being a sickness, when you infect an organism, when you make it sick, if you do not follow, if the sickness is unable to continue to follow through, at some point the organism will eventually readapt itself. So what I believe happened is that in the in the 60s and 70s, we had a very great we were very great. We were definitely infecting the system. We were getting things done. Not to necessarily say there hasn't been work done since then, because there has been, but we have failed to follow through as much as we should have. In the future.
Come on now. Work it.
In the future, I believe that as a community and then later as a country, we can all work together to make sure that we follow through with the youth and the adults. I look forward to seeing what we accomplish when we put our minds together. Lastly, I would like to say that on March 11th, there will be the next Student Leadership Congress meeting at this building from 3:30 to 5 o'clock. I welcome all students to attend. We would love to have you and hear your feedback on what you would like to change in the district or what you would like to maintain. Whenever you are able to attend, we also have other meetings that are on the district website. Please go to our page and check it out. Thank you, and enjoy your night.
That was our student rep, Unique Fair Smith. Thank you, Unique. All right, the next item on our agenda is speakers addressing an agenda item. We begin with Thomas Kyler, who is a student. Thomas?
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Because I don't want to take a whole bunch of time, I got these right here that I'm going to pass out to the board members, so even after I leave, they can continue to educate themselves on what I'm going to be talking about tonight.
All right, now.
Can you tell us what school you go to?
So again, my name is Thomas Kyler, and I go to School Without Walls.
Come on now.
All right, now.
Appropriate for what was going on tonight, isn't it? Okay, so what I'm going to be talking about is vocational training and youth employment and the GIS scholars. So I'm going to start with the history of the GIS scholars. GIS stands for Geographic Information System. It's mapping, locations. It has to do with anything that has to do with where something is, how to get from one place to another. That's GIS in a nutshell. So we began in 2012. I started through the Summer of Opportunity Program. We went through 3 successful summers doing the Summer of Opportunity Program. I started my first summer in 2012. The next summer, I was a supervisor, and then the summer after that, the summer that just passed, 4 people that I had trained the summer before became supervisors, and I was supervisors over them. So one of our first projects outside of the, leaving summer in the fall was the Brownfield, in 2012, was the Brownfield Opportunity Area project, in which we were doing housing conditions in the 14621 area. The next major thing was the Voice of the Citizen grant in last year, where we, as the GIS scholars, secured $50,000. So the planning stages included, we did 3 months of planning. We created our own proposal. This is something that's really important. There was no adults in the room while we created this proposal to run. It was all youth. It was 5 of us. We wrote down what we wanted to do. We pitched that idea. We went to meetings, and we won the $50,000 by ourselves. Can I get a clap for that one? Okay, so the whole proposal is long and extravagant, but I'm going to give you the basis of what it was. It's youth programs and it's crime. What we wanted to do, because there's so many youth programs out here for kids that we don't know, we hear a lot about, we're creating these new youth programs, but a lot of people don't know about the youth programs that's going on today. So what we were doing is we were mapping all the youth programs. And another thing we wanted to do was crime. And crime was very important because the VOC grant was for crime reduction in the city of Rochester. So what we wanted to do was educate people about the crime because, we can turn on the news and see what's going on, but a lot of people don't exactly see exactly what's going on, and we don't hear about everything that's going on. So one of our things with crime was crime comparison. So comparing the crimes from 2013 to the crimes that occurred in 2014, seeing what was the changes, seeing what was the differences. Also analyzing crimes that happen in different seasons. What sort of crimes happen in the summer? What sort of crimes happen in the winter? One thing we noticed was a lot of more crimes happen in the summer than the winter. Why? It's cold outside in the winter. Nobody's outside. You know what I mean? In the summer, there's more people outside, more room for friction. People being, summertime, hot. Yeah, I don't know what to say. So, and we also did crimes around schools and community centers. So one thing that I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me draw. Sometimes I do that. I get ahead of myself. So let me come back a little bit. Okay, so that was a bit of our history. Now we're going to go into what we're doing currently, which is one of our major things is our school-based activities. So We partnered with MCC Geotech Project to create a geospatial certificate program just months after we actually presented at MCC's GeoFest.
That's telling you your time is condensing.
All right, I'm going. Okay. At School Without Walls, we installed a program, the GIS Scholars Program in School Without Walls. We have right now 2 GIS scholars earning community service credit, which is a high school credit for doing GIS. We're also providing training and supervisions for them to learn GIS. And one of the things we're doing at School Without Walls is we mapped out where all the students go to school at, and where all the students live. And what we did was we put all the crime on that same map. And what we did was measure the distance from the student's home to the student's bus stop, and we looked at all the crime that the students will interact with on their way to their bus stop and on their way to school. And that was something very important. And you can see that on the 3rd page and on the, the 3rd page and on the 2nd page. You can see the crime and you can see the bus routes. So our next sub-bullet is funding, which is very important. I know
Now listen, I have a suggestion. I have a suggestion. We're not picking up the whole of this buzzer is driving us all nuts. I would like to be able to come to your school and see the whole presentation, because what we're looking at a sheet of paper. This is on a computer, isn't it?
No.
I assume you have this stuff somewhere where you can make a presentation?
Yes.
I would like to, and I know there are other board members who would like to see it. Also, Commissioner Evans is telling me that he chairs the Excellent Student Achievement Committee. We look at how we can do things to make our district and our community better. So rather than try to condense this all into 3 minutes, which is why that buzzer keeps on ringing, can you make arrangements to talk to Commissioner Evans or myself, and we'll come to your school, or you can come here and do this full presentation?
Yep, and actually that was the next point I was going to make.
All right. He's ready for the school board.
Yep, so is that the signal that my time is up?
That's what that is.
Okay, well, thank you for letting me talk, and I enjoyed my time.
He's good.
One more thing. What grade are you in?
Miss Schuyler, what grade are you in?
I'm in the 11th grade, and I'm 16 years old.
All right.
Okay.
All right, next up is
School Without Walls, y'all.
James Dunphy. James Dunphy. Am I pronouncing that correctly? James Dunphy. James is not here. Again, thank you, Mr. Kyle. Let's give him another round of applause. Now we're going to move to speakers not addressing an agenda item, and we would begin with James Armbruster. James Armbruster. Okay. How about Elizabeth Laidlaw? I know she's here. I saw her. By the way, she's coming. For those of you who are veterans to the board meetings,
Just give it to
we
the
normally, you could just give it to the clerk.
Give them to the clerk. Give them to the clerk.
Okay. We normally, here you go. We normally have this little buzzer that rings. This is a new sound. But what that means, ladies and gentlemen, is that means your time is up. Mr. Kyler figured that out. But that's what that sound is. By our bylaws, everybody's given 3 minutes. And sometimes we can extend it. I can extend it. But we generally like to keep it to 3 minutes because otherwise people don't get an opportunity to speak. Ms. Laidlaw?
Thank you for your time. I spoke before you a year ago on behalf of urban Presbyterian tutors that are in several schools and have been in several schools for decades. We came before the board to ask for full funding for social workers in every building. And on behalf of principals and parent liaisons and parents, I want to thank you for giving the full funding for those social workers. In the years since I spoke to you, the Urban Presbyterian Group kind of exploded into an organization called Great Schools for All. We did that through the Grad Nation Summit a year ago. 11 of us went to Raleigh this past April to experience what deconcentrating poverty in an urban district within a metropolitan county can do. So we have a mission to help Monroe County deconcentrate poverty as much as we can, and that's why I'm before you tonight. I have 2 requests. One request is that the board make available to the community, whatever applications you are giving to the state has promised nearly $4 million to the city school district for the purpose of deconcentrating poverty. So we very much want to know what your plans are for the money and if we've applied for that money. The other request I have, and that is what the handout is about that I just gave you, at our November summit, and some of you were there, and thank you for your time, 125 community leaders prioritize 7 strategies for deconcentrating poverty. We produced 6 work groups from those strategies, so some of the work groups involved creating magnet schools. So, you know, and this isn't about sending poor kids to the suburbs. This is about recognizing the gifts that urban education has and replicating that education and allowing suburban children to come to the city and benefit from that. So that means duplicating SOTA, duplicating School Without Walls, duplicating World of Inquiry. These are part of the things we are looking for. We're giving these work groups 60 days to come up with a strategy. There are magnet schools, there's expanding urban-suburban programs, there's integrating summer learning opportunities for elementary school kids, there's regional planning. We need your voice. We need the voice of city school employees on these committees. They're populated now by urban suburban school district superintendents. We have people from the media. We have city council members convening these groups. But what my charge to you is for you to identify a person for each of these committees and send that name to me. The email addresses are there for each work group. The work groups begin this week, so we need those voices. And lastly, I always want to give you my gratitude for the work you do here. You know that I teach at Monroe Community College and have for 2 decades, and I have the pleasure of teaching students from the city school district once they leave the district. And I just want to thank you for all you do to make those students the top-notch students that they are.
Ricardo Adams. Mr. Adams.
Yeah, good evening. I really came here because I don't want to have to be asking the board for something, man, because people have letters after their name. I have one big letter. It's the B word, busy. I don't want to have to come up in here. I'm missing time from my school, going to meetings. My principal will tell you that. See, I ain't been there as much as I have been because I have to go to meetings about 44 school. We ain't got 16 school back over there. And now they talking about closing another grade at that school. I'm saying, leave them kids over there, man, until you get 16 back. If you really intend to open up 16, because nothing affects the community more than the school. Nothing. Nothing. And I lived there. I live less than 100 yards from that school. So what happens there affects me and my first grader and third grader. I don't want to have to go to more meetings. I'm asking Dr. Vargas, man, to preempt y'all, man, and just let the school stay as it is until 16 get back open. You know, quit closing out grades and have people in my community, my neighbors, talking about moving somewhere else because it's making my neighborhood unstable. Please, please, Dr. Vargas, preempt the school board and just handle your business, man, and think about the 19th Ward. 19th Ward is just as special as South Wedge or any other neighborhood in here, man. So that's why I came. And I'd like to say thank you to those students, man. They really represented. They really, really represented. Y'all have a good one.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Beverly Beverly Usher, I'm sorry.
I don't think I can do as good as him, but I'm a grandparent of 44, of a grandson of 44 school, and that's what I'm here for, too. I'm here because as a grandparent who's disabled, I spend a lot of time now fighting for 44 school because I see the quality education my grandson is getting. My grandson used to couldn't talk. Now with his speech therapy that we lobbied for into that school, he is talking now, can actually understand what he's saying. And to me, that's steps in the right direction. And 44 School is one of the most stable places that the children of my neighborhood, the 19th Ward, which I have been a part of for 51 years, it's one of the most stable places that we have there. They've closed so many schools down, and St. Augustine's has changed, and everything has changed around there. And it'd be ashamed if you take away the livelihood of the people who live around there. And even if we just ride by and know it's there, we know that school is there for other children that's coming along. So I'm asking, just like him, please don't take our school away. And it's not just for our generation, it's for the next generation and the next generation to come. We are getting tired of trying to fight for things that seems like we still can't get no control over. But if we make too much noise, we get beat down. I'm saying we should all be able to work together and do this together so our children can grow in a nice neighborhood with respect and dignity that they deserve to be treated with. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Doris Meadows. Dr. Doris Meadows. She will be followed by John Lang.
I'd like to add my voice to the two previous speakers. I believe you have my comments already sent by email. The closing of 44. This action is truly a turning point for our neighborhood. Neighborhood schools have been the lifeblood of our community. Yet for more than a decade, we have been hemorrhaging institutions, programs, resources to the detriment of neighborhood families. With the closings of School 37 and the School 16 buildings, as well as all the Catholic schools, including Our Lady of Good Counsel, St. Augustine's, and St. Monica's, our neighborhood has been deprived of access to local schools and the many benefits that educational institutions provide to the community. Neighborhoods benefit from the support and resources provided by the school. This educational foundation has been documented by years and years of educational history and research. Strong public schools nurture children, even when poverty, poor health, crime, and urban blight threaten them. The location of schools in the community also provides residents the opportunity to support, to guide, and to celebrate the next generation. The 19th Ward Community Association celebrates its 50th anniversary year. During most of these years, there has been an active schools committee that has struggled mightily to give students in our neighborhood the education they deserve. This schools committee has been active in the foundation of Wilson Magnet. This schools committee also fought the closing of Old Madison, and after that happened, they joined with the district and got a number of grants to put Wilson Magnet into place as a junior high. The School of Arts was spun off from that effort. And again, I want to emphasize that community people were involved in these schools. I'll just end by saying that as I mentioned, we're celebrating our 50th anniversary, and one of our activities occurred in January, and Judge Stephen Miller came and spoke at this event called Illuminating the Beloved Community. And Judge Miller gave an eloquent account of growing up in the 19th Ward and attending 19th Ward schools and being part of the community and having places, businesses to go, places to go for recreation, and how that experience, that community experience really shaped his life. So again, we ask that School 44 not be closed. I believe that the first part of this closing is going to be pre-K and K, and there's nowhere else people in our community can go for that program. Thank you.
Thank you. John Lang.
Yes, my name is John Lang. I'm chair of the 19th Ward Community Association Schools Committee. It was always a hell of a mouthful. And again, here to say in the 19th Ward, there's a large population of elementary school children. There's a building 16 that will be reoccupied hopefully in 2018, but until then it remains vacant. School 10 is a citywide draw. 29 is somewhat of a citywide draw for the population they have. And that only leaves 44 as one school that's in the neighborhood. So to see that first grade being taken away, K being taken away, it's distressing to see that. This year, in the pre-K program at School 44, there's 50 kids. I met with one of the teachers and a couple of the parents. The parent was thrilled that the principal and the vice principal knew their son's name. And so he could say, I know the principal, I know the vice principal, and they know me and call my name. It would be nice if they can continue in that same space next year for K and School 44. So there'd be continuity with the people they know and the people they've grown to respect. So again, the appeal is to delay the closure or maybe even never close School 44 because it's needed in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Celine Besanti. Celine Besanti. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing the name. You'll help me out when you take the mic.
Good evening. My name is Celine, and this is my partner, Ala DeWolf. Hello. And we would like to thank you for having us tonight. We're very excited to talk to you about a new program to the Rochester City School District. It's also new to Monroe County as well. It's called MAC Academy, and MAC stands for Making a Connection. Our goal is to service refugee youth and help them make connections in the Rochester community, build self-esteem, become self-sufficient, learn English, seek vocational training.
Being an immigrant, I know how it feels to come to this country and not have a family, and how high expectations are in front of you and you don't even know where to start. And this is the position that our students are in right now. They are placed in the high schools in the city school district, and they are expected to graduate from there, but they do not speak English as their formal education was interrupted back home. So here with this great MAC Academy program, they have an option of coming to us and have an individual connection plan, which we sit down and we set a goal for them, whether they already know what they want or we help them to set it for them. And we make a plan of how we can achieve it, and we encourage them. There is required to do 50 hours of community services. They have an option to attend career trainings, which OASIS offers to the participant, and these are all demand positions. Some of them are electrical, culinary, printing and promotions, building maintenance.
Again, the program's really unique because we cater to what the students want, what their goals are here in America. Our students come from all over the world. They come from Yemen, they come from Somalia, Burma, Thailand, Nepal, Cuba, Honduras. I mean, just a wide range of countries from all over the world. And they come here, and it's a very difficult transition. So we cater to what they want. We cater to their goals. We help them become self-sufficient and be successful in America and in Rochester.
So what we're looking for are the students. So if you do know students that would benefit from our program, please let us know. We are going to leave brochures here so that you can pass them on. And
right now we have 27 students, and some of their accomplishments, we have one that was hired at Strong Hospital, and we have some that have completed the program and are doing community service hours,
They're out there applying for jobs. We've taken them to visit colleges.
We've been to RIT, we've been to MCC, we've been to the apprenticeship trainings, and we also have a training how to open your own business so that there are there are no problems with employment. I'm so sorry. Thank you for your attention.
Yes, thank you for having us. And anytime you want to come visit, we're at 30 Hart Street location, up on the 3rd floor, room 306 and 304.
Thank you very much. Sandy Jordan. She will be followed by Larry Ellison.
It's my first time hearing about it, so I'm not exactly sure. Oh, could be part of voice.
Good evening.
Good evening.
For those of you who don't know, my name is Sandy Jordan, and I'm president of ASAR, which stands for the Association of Supervisors and Administrators of Rochester. I'd like to start by thanking Commissioner White for attending our Executive Council of ASAR this week. You gave up a good part of your evening to listen and demonstrate your true honesty to our members. Your commitment to our students also rang loud and clear to every one of us. Every board member will see this evening on their email questions that our Executive Council has proposing questions about the budget. In addition, you'll see a list of questions that we have for our superintendent, who's not here this evening. 1 year ago, Rochester school principals and administrators voted no confidence in Superintendent Vargas. This was not an easy vote for our members. The vote reflected our dissatisfaction with his leadership and with his lack of communication with school administrators, the people directly responsible for our students on a daily basis. At the time, we hoped he would listen to our concerns and join us in a collaborative path to improve our schools. We may as well hoped for a heat wave in February. Instead of collaborating, the superintendent has further segregated himself from his school leaders. He has even gone as far as blaming us for all of the district's ills while he was in Albany speaking to the state legislature. He complained repeatedly about inflexible rules and contractual constraints that prevent him from improving schools. The problem with that, the issues he complains about are the ones which he has control of. In some cases, they're issues that he created. In the spirit of transparency, did you know that the superintendent wants state law amended so school administrators can earn tenure after 7 years instead of 3? He claims this will be more timely in an objective process to remove non-performing school administrators, as he testified in Albany. In actuality, state law already empowers the superintendent to dismiss any administrator who receives 2 consecutive years of unsatisfactory performance. In the spirit of transparency, did you know he claims to not have the authority to place principals and assistant principals in the schools of his choice? In reality, our contract, which has been expired since June, allows him to place these employees in any school in the district. In the spirit of transparency, did you know he has complained loudly about the principals and administrators who cash in unused vacation days? In fact, this benefit was accepted by the superintendent's own negotiation team in our last contract. ASAR doesn't demand benefits, we negotiate them. Did you know, in the spirit of transparency, we offered a zero-cost contract with a 50% reduction in vacation days, which was turned down by the superintendent. In the spirit of transparency, did you know that collaborating and engaging in effective communication would have eliminated all the nonsense this week about accusing the School 9 leadership of not finding a Spanish team? Engaging in effective communication eliminates all problems like this. ASAR members are willing to engage in collaboration and transparent conversations. Instead of complaining to Albany about matters already under his control, the superintendent should work collaboratively with his school leaders. Our members remain committed to providing a positive and safe environment every single day they go to work. We remain receptive to helping the superintendent move any academic agenda. He asks us for flexibility. Flexibility is dependent on mutual respect and open communication. When the superintendent begins to communicate with and respect his administrators, he will see that the flexibility he is asking for has always been there. Maybe that heat wave will arrive in March. Thank you.
Larry Ellison.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I do this speech this evening, and I'll start out by saying, with all due respect, this is probably one of the most difficult things that I have done in my professional career, as this speech is about leadership and the person who sets the tone for our district. There's a pamphlet cover in my office with a picture of Robert F. Kennedy. The title of the pamphlet is Speak Up and Speak Out. ASAR unit members can no longer be silent regarding our concerns. According to the literature, leadership is about behavior, an observable set of skills and abilities. When leaders are at their personal best, there are 5 core elements that can be observed. Leaders model the way, inspire others, challenge the process, enable others to act, and encourage the heart. Element number 1, model the way. Effective leaders establish principles concerning the way people should be treated and set a positive example for others to follow. Leaders unravel bureaucracy when it impedes action. Leaders do not belittle staff in meetings or place barriers in accomplishing the work. In our case, it is the removal of the authority in areas such as budgeting, scheduling, student discipline, and staffing. The superintendent says that he values ASAR unit members, but his actions state otherwise. Element 2, inspire others. Effective leaders believe that they can make a difference. The superintendent's testimony in Albany all but implied that he cannot make a difference because of the administrators. Element 3, challenge the process. Effective leaders look for innovative ways to improve the organization. Leaders do not place blame on those who are in the field attempting to get the work done, as this can be destructive, causing morale issues. Element 4, enable others to act. Effective leaders foster collaboration and build teams. Understand that mutual respect is what sustains extraordinary efforts. Strive to create an atmosphere of trust and human dignity. The superintendent says he values ASAR unit members, but his actions state otherwise. Element 5, encourage the heart. Effective leaders keep hope and determination alive. If leaders are publicly made out to be incompetent, hope and determination will be negatively impacted. Finally, Dr. Vargas is our leader, our motivator, and our model. ASAR unit members are asking that he stand behind his administrative teams by removing barriers, by listening, and by seeking to understand what we are attempting to communicate. In the spirit of being transparent, his words must align with his actions. Go ASAR! Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for abiding by that time frame to the extent you could. We appreciate everyone's comments. And for those of you that cannot stay, we have a safe travel back to your homes. Next on our agenda is the superintendent's report. We are honored and pleased to have Deputy Superintendent Otua with us this evening. It's all yours.
Good evening. I just want to say for the record that Dr. Vargas has scheduled a time on March 6th to dialogue with SR members. I am here today to speak on behalf of Teaching and Learning and what we do to support student needs. Teaching and Learning supports achievement for all students. We have our academic priorities, more and better learning time, reading by third grade, instructional excellence for all students. We have social and emotional support, positive engagement, and activities such as art, music, sports, extracurricular activities, and also support from our school administrators, counselors, social workers, and nurses. Specialized services for students with disability is part of Teaching and Learning. And in Teaching and Learning, we believe that every child has the right and the will to succeed. We are committed to ensure that students have the ability to graduate on time and be career or college ready, regardless of disability. We have a legal and ethical obligation to make sure that we have high expectation for all students, regardless of their individual disability. Across the district, there are different types of disabilities that you can find in Rochester. There are 13 categories of disability classification in New York State. Here in Rochester, we have students that fall into all these 13 areas. To serve this wide range of disability type, a district like ours needs to offer a wide range of programs and services to meet the various needs of students with disabilities. As you look at the programs and services, they are just a list of our most common services used to meet the needs of our students. Why do we need to improve special education? When you look at the August graduation rate, it shows that in 2012, we had 18.7% of our students with disabilities graduating from high school. That means 1 in 5 students classified as disabled graduated from high school with a regular diploma. This compares Rochester with schools of similar population of disabled students. This does not mean that we should settle or aspire to have only 32, according to Buffalo, or 41 for Syracuse. However, it is important to benchmark against districts with similar profile to assist and identify practices that could benefit students with disabilities in Rochester. More importantly, we also want to look at much higher suburban school district counterparts who are graduating students with disability at rates higher than 70%. For example, in Pittsford and Penfield, both are graduating at 77%. Our expectation is to work towards providing our students with disability with similar experiences that students get in the suburban school district, resulting in better outcomes. We are in year 2 of a 5-year improvement plan. This plan was developed with input from principals, special ed administrators, parents, and teacher representatives. It incorporates recommendations from the state and the city council audits. There are 3 goals that we will improve in order to achieve better student outcomes. We need to offer more services that meet specific needs of students with disability. We have expanded our range of services with the goal of more program options that will meet the student need. We are providing ongoing professional development to our committee chairpersons. We are also monitoring and supporting the IEP development and CSE process to ensure high quality. We will continue to provide access to CTE programs. How do we integrate students with disability? This chart shows us the integrated co-teaching ICOT class and the consultant teacher class. Special ed teachers collaborate with general ed teacher in both of these classes. But when you look at the ICOT, students have 2 teachers all day in core subjects. Whereas in the consultant teacher, a special ed teacher helps students in the subject where they need help. In the ICOT classroom, we have up to 12 students with disabilities in the classroom. We're proposing that we will have 3 to 6 students with disability in the CT classroom. In grades K-6, special education teachers are in the same room all day. In the consultant teacher model class, in grades K-6, special ed teachers may work in multiple classrooms to support the needs of students and where students are. We are serving more than 2,000 students with disability today under the ICOT model. And we are serving fewer than 400 students with disability under the CT model, the consultant teacher model. We want to provide more targeted service to meet students' need. Students are assigned to classrooms based on their disability. We have added 13 language-enriched ICOT classrooms, serving 90 students with significant language delays. We've also added 15 special classrooms. This year, we have 8 classrooms, and this is the first year. We've expanded program options for students with autism, serving over 70 students in ICOT and special class options. More students with disability are integrated with general education students in schools and summer programs. And all experts agree that this improves student achievement and student outcomes. How does students' achievement compare? Based on district achievement data, students in our consultant teacher model shows better achievement outcome on state and local assessments. Students in the consultant teacher model are more likely to be declassified out of special ed as they get older. What are we proposing for 2015-2016? For grades K-5, we want to continue the self-contained classes for students who need them. We also want more language-enriched ICOT classrooms, more classes for students with autism, continue ICOT classrooms in grade 1 to 5, continue consultant teacher services for most kindergarten students with disability. In grade 6-12, we want to continue self-contained classroom for students who need them. We also want to use consultant teacher services to replace most ICOT classroom. We want to use ICOT classroom for a group of students moving from a self-contained classroom to general ed classroom. We want to continue to expand access to career education for students with disability at Edison. How would we execute? Right now, through the CSA meeting, we are accessing each student individual need with special targeted services. We also want to place students with group of students who have the same need for focused support. We want to continue to offer teacher training through collaboration, instructional modules to all teachers. We want to also offer job-embedded workshops, webinars, and classroom walkthrough. For teacher scheduling, we want to collaborate with the principals and placement office to match instructional strength to student needs, and also maintain a manageable caseload for special ed teachers. School support, we still want to maintain 38 special education administrators to support principals and teachers in the schools.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry about that. Thank you very much, Dr. Otua. We are now going to move on to committee reports, but before we do that, I want to know if there are any questions for the Deputy Superintendent.
Just a technical question, Mr. President?
Yep.
Could this report is not in board docs? Could we have it uploaded after the meeting to board docs? It is? I'm looking right at board docs. I don't see it. Say again?
Refresh it, apparently.
Refresh it. Okay. I will try to do that. Thank you.
I had one question. Vice President Ellie and I, quite some time ago, and I know some other commissioners did it, I think Commissioner Evans visited Hope Hall, right? And they have achieved some phenomenal results with special ed students. And the first question I have is, do they use the ICOT model, or do they have this approach that you're implementing now? Do you know what their approach is? Does anybody know what they're, because they're, are you familiar with them? Do you know?
Go ahead. I was just going to say I'm on Hope Hall's board of directors.
Oh,
Have been, no, but go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Actually, my experience with Hope Hall is that they offer small groups of, the classrooms have small groups based on groups of 6. So they, offer somewhat like our special class 611 models here. So it's a very small group focused on student needs, as well as they have approaches to really address behavior and to be very proactive around that. So they offer a lot of proactive interventions and supports, as well as smaller group sizes.
And the only thing I would add, Mr. President, it's interesting that you bring up Hope Hall. I also brought them up. I also mentioned them in the ESA committee. Their graduation rate is basically almost 100%, and almost every single one of their students go to college. And I would also mention around this special education issue, most of the students are students that live in the city of Rochester that go there, so they would be kids that we can serve. As I said in the ESA meeting, and as you know, because you and Commissioner Elliott both visited that school, you can talk about your best practices seminar that you're going to be hosting. That's somewhere where we could learn from in terms of educating special education students, because if you look at the graduation rate, as Dr. Otua mentioned, it's unacceptable in terms of the amount of special education students we have graduating. The only way that we'll improve the graduation rate in Rochester is by increasing the number of special students that are classified as special education, increasing those graduation numbers. But I think the largest issue is, and I mentioned this at the ESA meeting, is we also need to reevaluate the students that we are classifying as special education. Because I know some people in special ed get mad at me when I say this, but there are too many students that are in special education because they are rambunctious young boys like I was when I was in school, and they're being classified with that, and I don't care what anyone says, it does carry a stigma. I mentioned the ESA meeting. Hugh Price, former head of the Urban League, wrote a book about education, and one of the things and recommendations that he made was that parents fight hard before they get the label of special education. If they need the services, let them get the services, but let them get them in a mainstream classroom. But we discussed this ad nauseum in ESA. But I will say I am pleased with our Mr. Siriano and the work that he has been doing to try to turn this around.
Let me just finish up that point. I appreciate this approach, this consultant teacher model, and I think you and Dr. Vargas and the Deputy Superintendent have done a good job in explaining why you want to shift here, and we should put this in context. This was after the Council of Great City Schools issued a report telling us that we needed to do some stuff differently, and this is really one of the first times I've ever seen somebody take a study off the shelf, dust it off, and do something with it. So that's progress in and of itself, so I do appreciate that. But in addition to the systemic approach, the shift district-wide, I'm wondering, are there schools that we could retool so as to, or replicate so as to take the successful approach that they've had at Hope Hall? For example, my understanding is that School Without Walls, it seems like we're talking about them a lot today, but my understanding is they do a phenomenal job at graduating kids with special needs. And their rate is way up there too. Now I realize that school doesn't operate under the same testing regimen that the rest of our schools do, but that doesn't mean, and I don't want to get into a detailed discussion about it now, but that doesn't mean we couldn't apply to the state to have another consortium school. And that's what, by the way, for those of you who don't know, who are watching, that's what School Without Walls is. I know people have said, well, Van, I don't know if the state will approve another consortium school, but have we asked? And I think we ought to be asking, because a lot of kids' dreams are deferred when they don't have to be. If there are models out there, and again, this is not without appreciating the systemic approach that Chris and Dr. Vargas have embarked upon here. But I think we ought to be, and I've said that, I beat this proverbial dead horse time and time again. This district just does not appreciate the concept of best practices. We've got models within our walls that where we're graduating students with special needs on time. And if you can't look within our walls, just go to Hope Hall. So I just don't, while I appreciate the systemic approach, I do not understand why we are not replicating this school that will help our kids get across the finish line. So I've said that to Dr. Vargas, and I will repeatedly say that. And I want to be quite honest with my colleagues here. I understand the financial bind that we're in, that this is not going to be a season where we're going to be talking about opening up another EPO or replicating another school. But as we go through the budget, we got to think seriously about that. And we got to make some decisions that have us reflect upon that. And I don't think I've had the opportunity to share this with you, but in my conversations with some CEOs in this community, one in particular that you all know really well, Danny Wegman has agreed to, and Adele is aware of this, has agreed to, and Dr. Vargas is aware of it and is encouraged by this offer, to have a financial person come in and help us look at the budget from their perspective. Because we got to find money to do some stuff differently. And again, having said that this is a good systemic approach, we ought to be replicating some of the schools. And I'm not comfortable, I got to tell you guys, with this position that I have got in my mind, that we can't do something else beyond East High School. Our needs are so great. We got to figure out a way to find some money to do some different stuff. And that stuff is not experimental. It's working. Malik and Vice President Elliott encouraged me to go to Hope Hall. It's working. So I apologize, and I will really reduce my president's report later on, but I think that stuff needs to be said. All right, any other questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I just have a comment. And I hate to do this, but I'm going to say it. I hate that we got the presentation. When was our meeting, Chairperson Evans? And that you're expecting, are we voting on something here?
No.
Well, here's the problem I have. I read about it in the newspaper, but then I don't know anything about it. Now, I don't know if any of this was discussed during leadership meeting. I may have missed it. I guess what I would like to have done is, before it gets to the paper, before the press contacts us, that we are informed about what is happening. And so that's my criticism about this, that the board has not had sufficient enough time, even really to do an analysis on it. The fact of the matter is that we have to go out there and promote it. So that's my concern, that we're getting these initiatives at the last minute, as if the board doesn't have a part in this, and as if, we don't have people in the community, voters that we have, and taxpayers that we have to go back and who holds us accountable. And so we can't be held accountable if we're not getting information from the district. Hate to have to say that, but I'm sort of just tired of getting this information the last minute and not really being able to become as much of an expert as I can because I don't have the information or I have it at the last minute. Thank you.
Vice President Elliott, let me take some responsibility. I'm not sure where the communication link may have broken down, and I'm not sure what the approach was of the administration, but I want to be clear about something. I did receive an individual report. I got an invitation from Dr. Vargas and Chris, and Dr. O'Toole was there, and I had a presentation that was similar to this. I made the assumption, this could have been my fault, I made the assumption that they were doing that with all board members, and perhaps not. And I should have perhaps asked that question, because if the presentation wasn't being given to everybody, then it would have been incumbent upon me to share that with my colleagues. I perhaps, and we don't need to figure that out now, but she makes a legitimate concern, and it might have been my fault. But we can figure that out, because I do think there was an effort to, for lack of a better phrase, pitch this to the board, and I know I received one, and again, I made the assumption that there were calls being made, but perhaps they weren't. And, you know, it was... I received one. You
yeah,
received
I did
one?
not.
Okay. Okay, all right, so it looks like some other folks got them. Okay, so maybe there was some miscommunication. So I just want to be clear. I think there was an effort, a good faith effort made, at least on my part, sounds like with others. But to be clear...
Maybe it got lost in the mail or something.
That's possible, that's possible. To be clear, we're not voting on anything tonight. This is an approach that the administration has already embarked upon, and my sense is, Vice President Elliott, and we'll make sure that they communicate with you in greater detail about this. This is a follow-up from a report that was...
well, I remember the report because I participated in it.
Right.
So I remember the report, but I got no information in terms, there was no connection to the report that was presented. I mean, I just don't have the information. But let's just squash that. It may have gotten lost in the mail. But let me ask this question through the Deputy Superintendent to Chris. What's projected for black boys in special education? Where are we now in terms of black boys being classified as special education, and where do we hope to go in the future? What's the number of our students who are involved in special education currently? And what are we projecting over the next 2 years or so, 3 years or so?
We have approximately 6,000 students with disabilities in Rochester.
Chris, you're going to need to repeat that.
But I asked you about black males particularly. Do you not have that information at this point?
No, I don't have
Okay,
that. No.
all right.
But I can get that for you.
Excuse me?
But I can get that for you, yes.
Commissioner Elliott, we will get that information for you.
Thank you.
Let's start with our standing committee reports. Commissioner Powell?
Thank you. First, if I could take a moment of personal privilege and say Commissioner Elliott and I spent 2 very long days in Albany for the Big 5 Lobby Day effort, our Lobby 2 days. I'm sure she'd be happy to speak to some of those points, but one of the most eye-opening experiences was spending time in the room with Utica, which is now an affiliate member of the Big 5, primarily because their experience with federally placed refugees is causing them to be a major center of English language learners, very much like ourselves, an island in the middle of an essentially middle-class white county, and often those students feel as isolated as our urban poor students feel from the larger community. We have a lot more in common than a school, than a city that size ought to have in common with us. And it's been a very enlightening experience as someone who's been a member of Big 5 for a long time. And I'll leave the rest of our experiences in Albany for Commissioner Elliott to speak on if she would like. Generally, the governor's budget has, and the lack of school aid runs has wreaked havoc, not just with schools like ourselves and the independent school districts that have to sort out what their tax levy is going to be, for this upcoming year, but with both the Assembly and the Senate, there are degrees of frustration and even panic because they see this as a huge power grab on the part of the governor. And in fact, the difference between his first budget proposal and his 30-day amendment wasn't to back off of a power grab, but rather to make a further reach for more power. And I'm not talking about just in the educational field, but in all manner of policy mandates in all aspects of government. And so it will be very interesting to see what transpires in the next, between now and when the state budget is typically brought up to a vote. Both houses are putting together their single house budget bills. The question everyone is asking is, does the governor really intend to negotiate, or is he going to stand ground and say, well, the leadership vacuum in the various in the two houses means that instead of 3 men in a room, there's going to be 1 man in 1 room, and I'm going to call all the shots. That's, I think, what both houses of the legislature are worried about, is that they can plan for a negotiation, but they don't know if the governor is intent on negotiating. And that's going to make a huge difference, not just for us, but in literally virtually every aspect of the state government this year. Having said that, let me turn to my policy committee report. There are a couple of errors in this report. First and foremost, we did meet on February 19th, which is Thursday. We reviewed the policy deliverable reports. There are 23 required reports. We've received 20 of those through the course of 2014. We also reviewed policy 5500, the student records and privacy policy. At this point in time, that should be reflected as an information item for all of my colleagues. They have access to the amended proposal, or the amended language of our policy proposal. We will be in discussion phase next month. 5500, the student records and privacy. So that will be a discussion item next month. My written report as posted on board docs says that policy 6741 and policy 5420 are discussion items this month, and they're also listed that way on our agenda, but in fact, they are resolutions 508 and 509 in your packet. We did discuss them last month, and so now they are up for a vote. Policy 5740 is the professional services policy. It has a very minor change in terms of the timing requirements for when RFIs and RFPs go out for service contracts greater than $100,000. It changes the language from required at least once every 3 years or following the expiration of existing contract term, whichever is greater. It changes that language to required prior to the expiration of existing contracts terms, which obviously we don't really want the old contracts to expire without putting an RFP out to replace it. Policy 5420 is a brand new policy. It's required by the state. It's the concussion management policy. You heard me talk about it last month. We are following the New York State School Board Association sample policy in large measure, and we did get a presentation from Mr. Cotto quite some time ago. Commissioner Cruz, do you recall, was it November or December? November? It was back when you were still chairing the policy committee.
Yeah, I think it was back then. Yeah.
So the
December.
policy committee has had a considerable exposure to this potential policy, but we finally have an opportunity to make it official tonight, and I thank you for your indulgence. We have one major policy we're going to be taking up next month at our regular scheduled third Thursday policy committee meeting. I don't have the date in front of me. No, I really don't have the date in front of me. I apologize. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Commissioner Evans? Thank you. I'll try to be brief in my remarks. You heard about the special education redesign already from the deputy superintendents. I won't go further there other than saying that the committee anticipates continuing to monitor this redesign in progress, and we really anticipate an improved outcome in terms of the graduation rates for students who are classified as special education. It's the only way, not the only way, but one of the key ways, that and East High School, two of the ways we can move the graduation rate in the district, which I've been watching like a hawk over the last couple of months. The suspension and discipline audit, as you know, the Auditor General did an audit on suspension and discipline. There are 31 areas that were part of the audit. We discussed district-wide policies and procedures for the development of student behavior, long-term hearing compliance with state-regulated guidelines, timeliness of suspension and discipline with the deputy superintendent included in the daily process, and monitoring of suspensions and disciplines, accurate data-driven decisions. But overall, let me say this, because I know that there is a community folks that are working on, with the Advancement Project, Community Foundation, and other folks to work around suspensions. But I want to be clear here so people understand that when there is an audit, internal or external, the purpose of the audit is to keep us in trouble. So these things are not mutually exclusive. So because we are working on a process to engage the community and reduce suspensions when there is an audit, the expectation of the board, and it's been the expectation since we've had have audits, is that audits are complied with in order to advance the recommendations that are in the audit. So the administration has been working, the deputy superintendent updated us that they are working on complying with the areas of recommendations in the audit, and we will be monitoring those to make sure that we follow up. We have way too many suspensions in this district. Way too many, and most of them don't involve violent incidences. A lot of them involve kids mouthing off, and we just need to deal with them there. Basically tell them, sit down, be quiet. So we look forward to seeing suspensions reduced, but more importantly, making sure that we're in compliance with suspensions. We also discussed and also the committee received a report with provided updates, so board members, those are on board docs. The Edison redesign and proposed structure of the Edison campus, offering 4 pathways that will offer opportunities for students to graduate and successfully gain employment, was discussed. You have the resolution in your packet, 2014-15 Resolution 480. Some of you may remember, back in the day, Edison was a school where it had a waiting list as long as my arm to get in. All right, I got a sister that graduated from their class in 1986. We want to bring Edison back to the way that it was, a little more updated with some of the fields that are in high demand, and the hope is that we'll be able to do that through this resolution. And there was a recommendation from the committee that, as we go through the Edison redesign, that we work to involve the alumni. There's a strong alumni network of folks that go back to when Edison was on, Clifford Avenue, that are very interested in seeing Edison move back to its glory days. Lastly, Mr. President, because I know I just wanted to, we're getting reports regularly in AESA and monitoring about where we are with schools that are on track for graduation and what they need to do, and I'm anticipating Deputy Superintendent in March that we'll get an update that will include the January exams. But Mr. President, I did just want to recognize 4 schools that are right now on track for their students to be over 70% in terms of graduating. Right, I'm doing 70 because I think the statewide average is 74 or something like that. School 58. All right. Soda, School Without Walls, Commissioner Elliott, surprisingly. And Rochester Early College.
58 is my school also.
That's right. Okay, there you go. But who's counting? Rochester Early Career College High School, that's my school. And Wilson's close, they can get there. But so, and these numbers may change after we get the January results. But you know, Mr. President, you talk a lot about
saying what we say we're going to do and finishing strong. And those schools I named are schools that have, the students have, at this point, this is going to change once January, which we get January results, they had 11 credits and at least 3 Regents exams with 65 or higher. So the hope is that students are on track. If we do what we need to do, we could have, I don't want to jinx it. We could have a decent graduate. We won't be where we want to be, but we'll be closer to our goal. We could have a great graduation rate this year if we focus. And that's why I want to, each meeting, give updates. Last thing I'll say is, I convened the Unite Rochester meeting with local and elected officials throughout the county. One of our goals was to push to expand the urban-suburban program, not because it's a panacea, but because we think that folks need diversity. We want to also do the suburban to urban piece where we get suburban kids in here. And I know that Great Schools for All came. The Great Schools for All did a presentation, and I don't know if Ms. Laidlaw is still here. She may be gone. But some of the items that she talked about are items that we have been discussing in Unite Rochester and working towards, particularly the countywide magnet schools and also the urban-suburban expansion. So that concludes my reports. Thank you.
Vice President Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to take a point of personal privilege before I start my report. I wanted to mention that I had visited the Young Mothers Program, and one of the things that I found out, although I knew about it, but we're dealing with so much, is that if we have students who are out, they only have 1 or 2 hours of instruction every day. And we've got to change that. We cannot afford to have our students to have only 1 or 2 hours of instruction a day. So I wanted to point that out here, but I'm interested in seeing how we can change it. I guess that's the minimum that's required by the state, but I'm looking at the district. I would like the district to increase that, because if we have students, particularly if we have students who have been suspended, and say they've been suspended 20 days, and we do have that where kids are suspended 20 days or even more, then we're talking about that they only get the minimum of 1 or 2 hours of academic instruction a day. We cannot afford to have that to happen. And so that's something that I'll be following up on, Mr. President and my fellow commissioners. We just cannot afford that to happen. And just to go along with Commissioner Evans' report, I wanted to say that I did attend the urban-suburban conversation a few weeks ago. I was not able to go last night or the night before because I was in Albany, and you may have seen the editorial that I did in the paper around the whole issue of the Spencerport program. We attended, I don't know if we reported it, if it was last month with regard to the Monroe County School Boards Association, where we talked about the poverty rate that is out in the suburbs, and that their willingness to help us, because they were talking in the meeting about, these schools in the suburbs are being so good, graduation rates are good and that kind of thing. And so I stood up and said, well, and this was the Monroe County legislative breakfast, that maybe, we shouldn't be there because we've got issues. And what they said is that, yes, we should be there, and that they're willing to help. And so it's a matter of trying to find out how we have them to come and help us in order to get the graduation rate. What did stand out, Mr. President, is that they recognize that they have this issue of poverty. They put the infrastructure in place because the goal is that they're going to graduate. And they have a high graduation rate among these students who are in poverty. So their system is, first, yes, you're going to graduate. Now, let's put the system in place in order to make sure that they graduate. So I think that they can help us to do that. And so on March 5th, I've got a meeting with some representatives out at Gates Childlight to begin to understand what they're doing around graduating their students out there. So I'm excited about that and looking forward to reporting about what they do out there. As Commissioner Powell says, she and I, along with some of the district staff, was at Lobby Day on yesterday and Tuesday. You know, we met with a number of legislators all day long, except who was that with us? Bill, Patty, and Ed. Our train was late by 4 hours, so we missed part of the first days of lobby. It was horrendous. But I'm excited to say that I think we've made some relationships up there. We'll talk about that in executive session, but we've made some relationships, and I'm really excited about that on the education level. I'll tell you about that in executive session. So I'm really excited about that, Mr. President. And before I get to my report, I do want to again talk about Black History Month. This is when African Americans and our nation celebrate Black History Month. And as I said, it has to also be a time in which we examine where we have been and where we are going. We still have, in the African American community, high incarceration rates. We still have our young Black men being shot more than any other race of people. We still have low graduation rates. We still have mental health issues in our community, and we still have high unemployment rates that are in our community. So while we celebrate all of the great work that has been done, we also have to look at how do we address these issues as a people. I've been reading and listening to some of the works by Dr. Amos Wilson, who talks about beyond civil rights to Black revolution. And so that revolution includes how do we get rid of these high incarceration rates and graduation rates and all of the things that I just mentioned. So, and I also wanted to address the remarks by the parent, the immigrant parent. And if he was here, I would have sort of given him some information, my own personal understanding of that. And because Joe Robach also had this question at the legislative breakfast, well, why, when Africans come to this nation, that they can excel? Well, the response to that is because they have not been and I'm using this word, but this is not the correct word, vilified by racism and slavery and Jim Crow, and have a psychological inferiority based on the whole racist system that we've lived on, and the whole system whereby it prefers one group above another. And so people who come from this country, particularly Africans who come into this country, don't have that mental state to deal with. Now, having said all of that, and we do have some issues in our community, I really believe that, as Martin Luther King said the day before he died, we will get to the mountaintop. We just have to recalibrate. We've got some work to do, and we will get there. And so I think that we have to, Mr. President, really focus in now on how do we get rid of these social ills, and I think that we can do it, and we'll be a better nation for it. So I'm really excited about that. And I just want to, lastly, for my personal privilege, I really want to acknowledge Minister Lawrence Evans. When I first met him, he was the director of the Neighborhood Street Academy. And one of the things he said to me, you live in the suburbs? I don't know if he remembers that, But it was a matter of, making sure that you had people who really was concerned about our community. So I really would like to congratulate him on that much deserved award. He's been in the trenches for, 50 years or more. So just again, want to congratulate him. So my report from the Committee of Intergovernmental Relations was a committee of the whole, where we invited Chief Simonelli from the Rochester Police Department to talk to us about what were the issues that are going on down at the terminal, particularly in light of the fact that the district is resistant about putting funding in there, or resources. How can we help to ensure that when our students go downtown, that it is safe for everybody to be there? And so I'm pleased to report that we really thought about, Mr. President, as you know, volunteers to come down to the terminal. And that seems to be really accepting to the chief. Our parent representative is going to get parents to come down to the terminal. The mayor has agreed to use her clergy on patrol. The 3-on-3-on-3 that the city council, school board, the county has also agreed to be trained and to volunteer. And when we were down there, when I walked the terminal with the RTS CEO, Bill Carpenter, when we were walking around, there were 2 young people who wanted to know what we were doing. They also volunteered to be a part of this, to help in this. And so I'm really excited about the fact that we've got all of this opportunity and people are willing to volunteer to help with this issue. And so we met with the mayor, the superintendent, and myself and some others with RTS, and so we're working on trying to bring a solution to this situation. And so I'm really, it seems really to be an exciting time. The issue is that we have to make sure we can sustain it. You know, that we've got the volunteers in a way in which, and they will be trained. So, and I've also volunteered to be a part of that as well. So really looking forward to the other strategies that we're going to be developing as it relates to, you know, our students being downtown. And lastly, while I won't just read the report, when we were in Albany, we did have a legislative agenda, but that one, if you recall at the legislative breakfast, Assemblyman McGann and some others made some recommendations and to our legislative agenda. So based upon those recommendations, the committee tweaked the report. And so what I have before you, if you have your updated legislative agenda, and I'll just, some of the things that we did, in light of the fact that the superintendent is doing expanded day, we removed the 180-day request. And also, in addition to requesting more universal pre-K funding, we asked that that funding be sustained, because if you recall, some of the funding that the governor provided was not necessarily funding that was going to be sustained. So we're asking for sustained funding at this point. And also funding for our expanded day. So what I'd like to be able to do is, I don't know if you all have had a chance to review this, but if you, let me just recommend that it be approved. And what I'd like to do, since I had an old version of when we presented in Albany, what I'd also like to be able to do is to submit this to our Big Five conference and have them to distribute it to the legislators that we met with. So do I present a motion for that, or?
Well, what I would suggest that we do is we're going to break for a minute as we go into executive session.
Okay.
Maybe people can review it. Then when we come out of executive session, we can perhaps vote on whether to approve this updated legislative agenda.
All right. I know I was long. Please forgive me. That concludes my report.
That's all right. Commissioner Cruz?
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my turn, so settle in. So.
I'm sorry. I won't be that long-winded in the future.
No, it's his turn. No, it's his turn.
I got a list of a few things here. No, I'm only kidding. I'll make it quick. I was not able to be a part of the early presentation because I was actually at Monroe High School on the screening committee for the Irene Sampson Jones Scholarship Committee. So we were giving away scholarships for our seniors at Monroe High School today, this afternoon. So, and I got to tell you, if there's anybody here from Monroe still, the applications, the essays, and the stuff that I was reading today was absolutely phenomenal from some of those kids. And the creativity in their writing skills was just amazing stuff. And it's very difficult to figure out who you're going to give it to and who you're not going to give it to. But, you know, ultimately, there's 3 winners, and the grand prize, if you might, is $5,000 per year for the 4 years that they're in school. So every year they give this out. It's been going on for a number of years, and it's always a treat. So I apologize I wasn't able to be here earlier for the other activities. That said, The Finance Committee met on February the 19th. And Mr. President, you have in your package a series of recommended resolutions regarding the adjustments to the budget. There's resolutions 485 through 488. And this is about the time of the year when we have a better idea how much is coming in grants, what our revenues are, although the question is still the state question about how much, but at this point, we also have an idea of what our expenses are and sort of doing some projecting out. And this is the time of the year when we normally do the budget amendments. So you have four in front of you tonight. I don't know if you want to take them out tonight, right now as a bundle as part of my Finance Committee, or if you want to go wait until later in the agenda. I would prefer, since we're in Finance Committee, if I could propose those.
Absolutely.
In Resolution 485, what happens is that depending on what your budget revenues are and what your expenses are, for instance, we're doing to the general fund, where there's a decrease of $610,000.
Commissioner Cruz, let me just ask you, so what you're thinking about is having the discussion now and voting on them now, is that what you're talking about?
Yes, because we're already in finance.
That's fine, but we would need a motion.
Right, so
right?
if I can make a motion to accept 485.
We're going to 485, 488? For 488?
Yeah, let's do the bundle, 485 to 488, that'll be my motion.
Is there a second to that motion? There's a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Cruz?
If I may, just very briefly to explain. So the first 485, this is a net decrease in the general fund to compensate for some of our expenses, $610,000. The staff has done a phenomenal job with a special aid fund, and there is an increase of $4 million, $4,700,000 in grant revenue this year, so that's going to offset some of our expenses. There is no change, which is a nice thing to hear, in food services. And overall, the overall net increase to the budget is about $4,162,000, and those four amounts are reflected in the four resolutions that you have in front of you.
Any questions?
Yes, I had some questions, Mr. President. It was unclear to me in reference to 485, because I saw is it a 77,000 number with regard to RJSCB, which I was unclear about. And let me just get to the resolution.
So Overton's here.
Yeah. So 485. It says E-rate increased by 77,000, 77.8. Can you explain what we're talking about there?
Yeah, well, he's coming up. That's compensation for what we get to update our technology and that kind of stuff. So I think we've got a better rate this time around.
Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Sewell.
485.
Yes,
And I'm referenced the increase by $77,894.
Yes, what happened is that as we did our budget, we had estimated that we were only going to get $970,000. But what happened is that when the payments actually came in, we actually got $1,047 more. So what we did, we increased our revenue because we had more cash coming in than we had budgeted.
Okay, so explain what's going on in 486 for me, please.
486, I don't have the resolution in front of me.
That's to amend the special aid grant.
So grants that we've received?
These are all the grants that we received.
Right.
Okay.
So when we budgeted at the beginning of the school year, last year we had anticipated about $107 million in grant. When we did the budget amendment in December, that number had increased to $112 million.
Yeah, I had read that. Okay. And then
subsequent to that, since December, we have had another $4.7 million increase in grant, and that's stemming from a couple things as it relates to federal grant. We got some race to the top grants.
Okay.
We were able to garnish a rollover
we had an increase of a $1.1 million in Title I. And IDEA, they allowed us to roll over another $444,000. So all of that increase was related to title federal grants that we were working with them. We got some new grants, and they allowed us to roll over additional funds.
Okay, and then 487, why is it necessary for the district to make a recommendation for us to acknowledge that there's no amendment to the school food service budget fund budget? Why is that necessary?
Because as you look into the other amendment, what we have to do, Amendment 488, we have to tell how the total amount of the budget is going to be, and if you fail to include that, then you're going to look as if you're missing $20 million.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Did a great job.
They did.
Any other questions, comments? You said, Commissioner Cruz? All those in favor of resolutions 485 to 488, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Madam Clerk, you reported that vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance Committee is recommending putting a motion forward to approve the financial report for January 2015.
That motion has been made and it's been seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. And putting forth a motion to accept the second quarter student activities funds report.
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays?
Thank you, Mr. President. You have before you in the packet resolutions for educational facilities. That's further in the agenda. Our next Finance Committee meeting will be held Thursday, March 19th, following the Board Governance and Policy Committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Cruz.
And one last reminder, and staff will kill me if I didn't remind them. Starting March 23rd is when the budget is being presented by the superintendent. That is going to kick off a number of different dates for questions, responses, public hearings, and all those kinds of things up through April. So we all need to be clear in our calendars. There's a lot of meetings, and we'll try and keep ahead of all of that with information. So thank you, Mr. President.
All right. Commissioner Campos?
The Governance Committee, we met on February 19th. We talked about the reorganization of the board's administrative team, as well as taking a look at the bylaws, policy, and what might be some opportunities. So in terms of the reorg, given the state of the district, the budget gap, and the ability to still meet students' and families' needs, we said, okay, how can we reorganize in order to reduce the resources needed, but also align what our strategic directives are. So as everyone's received, there is a proposed reorganization to better support the board, the endeavors to elevate the district-wide, the social justice, the equity, and diversity goals and priorities in developing the strategic planning, and to really being able to advance innovative, effective, and authentic instruction. That's a mouthful right there. There's a lot of work in that. So in this new structure, there would be two positions. One would be the executive assistant for social justice, and one would be executive assistant for instructional change, and aligning their priorities based on that and reshifting some workload. So the board's been provided an overview of the reorganization, and at this point, I'd like to make a motion to accept the proposal for the reorg.
Is there a second to that motion? Been moved and seconded. All those, any discussion?
I had mentioned to Commissioner Campos that I did not get a chance to review it, but I do want to support the committee, but I did not review it, and so I don't have any questions at this point. We still have, let me just ask this question. We still have a clerical staff? Okay, all right, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
All those in favor of the proposed reorganization of the Board of Education's administrative team say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. Anything else, Commissioner
Yeah,
Campos?
yep. So our bylaws, the last time they were amended were in July 2011. And so we're looking at ways we can be more effective and opportunities. So we've been looking at different bylaws from different school districts, some outside of the state. We've also been looking at our neighbors as well in order for us to be better. So we will continue that discussion. We'll have a mock-up of some ideas that we had discussed and in hopes of bringing something in April. Also, just a reminder, everyone should be receiving tomorrow in a packet, the superintendent's review based on everyone's feedback, streamlined. Please make sure to review that. On Tuesday, we have our meeting to put something together final and make sure we're all calibrated. So that concludes my report. We will be meeting on Thursday, March 19th at 5:30. And just a quick point of personal privilege, our leadership, and Mr. President, you're going to probably say this, but we were at the RIA Academy, and wow, what spirit, enthusiasm, rigor, and hope that those students have, and it's based on the staff there. And it was just amazing to be able to hear the students' stories and what they've overcome and just the impact that they want to have. So it was great. So just a thank you to Mary and her team over there. They are awesome. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Campos.
Yeah, just another point, I forgot, won't be long. But I wanted to announce that I think it's on March 5th, that a number of us are going to be going over to our public safety program that's housed over in the Rochester Educational Opportunity Center. The mayor will be there. Mr. President, you may recall, this all came about when the mayor was then president of City Council, and Councilwoman Loretta Scott and myself really became aggressive to make sure that this kind of program was available to our young people. We're looking forward to hearing some good reports from this public safety program. It includes the police department, fire department, and what am I missing? I'm missing, I am the Rural Metro Emergency. That meeting is going to be on 8 o'clock, March 5th, and I'm just looking forward to that. So I wanted to announce that. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Elliott. I will, too, try to be very brief. Commissioner Evans reminds me that Scandal comes on in 10 minutes.
It amazes me, the men that watch that. Oh, God,
it is a good show, though. It is a good show. I'm just going to have to do on demand. Keeping it real, Commissioner Evans. But I did want to say, that I read with interest Commissioner Campos's notice to the community that she is not going to run for another term. And I did want to note, I immediately sent her a text that said, "You will be missed." And her response was, "Well, you know, we got a lot of work to do." And I said, yeah, 10 months actually is a lot of time. And, a lot more will be said about her retirement from the board, not from service, but retirement from the board. But I did want to say, and I know I'm speaking for the entire board, that you will be missed. And there is a certain, and I don't think this can be said enough, there's a certain chemistry that builds over a period of time. And I did say to her, quite honestly, you're messing with the chemistry. But more importantly, she has commitments to her business and to her family, and that's one of the reasons why we respect her so. But I'm sure there'll be plenty of time to comment some more about it. But I did want to say that it was one of the most significant stories of this week. But Commissioner Campos and I were at RIA. To be brief, you just say Mary, and you know what kind of energy that she brings to any presentation. She did some different stuff. You know, everybody knows we meet at 7:30 in the morning now at the schools. And she did some stuff that had never been done before. One of the things that she did was she had students present basically the finish line report. And for those of you who don't know, we have a practice now where we go through with the principals what the finish line looks like at their schools and how they're going to get their kids across the finish line. And Mary chose to do it in a very different way, and it was a very emotional presentation. One of the reasons why I played that song early this evening, I was there, was because I heard that song at RIA. It sounds kind of silly, but I really would encourage you to Commissioner Evans, as we were sitting there, went and looked up the lyrics for the song, and look up that song. It's very powerful, right? I won't sing it. I might sing it on DKX tomorrow, because that is a very powerful song. It's called I Was There. It's by Beyonce. And it really does remind us, I think many of us, why we do the work that we do. Because at the end of the day, we want to have made somebody's life different. And through all the struggles and the angst and the anxiety that we all experience in doing this work, remember why you are here. And when you listen to that song, particularly in the context of Black History Month, you'll realize that this is important work that we do, that we can really change people's lives. But I told people I would be short. So I want to thank Dr. Vargas and his team. As you all know, I happened to catch the SHOT report, and I said immediately, something's not right here. And I immediately sent an email to Dr. Vargas because I was concerned about the media fallout. And Dr. Vargas and his team immediately got on it. I don't know if you all have seen it yet, but there was a really contrite letter from the people that are contracted with the SHOT report, apologizing for the mistake that they made. It was very powerful apology. It's the kind of stuff that good leaders do. They were saying, you know, we expect more from ourselves. We didn't do what we were supposed to do. And it's a lengthy letter. I see Mr. Lopez shaking his head, and other folks have seen it. It's really an amazing letter. If you haven't read it, folks, you should. It's a great letter. It's an absolutely great letter. And what I'm suggesting to you all, some of you, let's keep it real, who are up for re-election, I know what's going to happen. They're going to pull out that 9%, and they're going to say, your district only graduates 9% of black males. First of all, that number is wrong, because even if you accept the 9%, right, 9% is reflective of, even in their scenario, of those that graduate that particular year. But what the problem with that number is, there's a number of problems with that number, but one of the problems was it made people think that only 9% graduate. Well, clearly, more than 9% of our black males graduate. But read the letter. It is an unusual letter, and for those of you that are running, or for those of you that are out there trying to represent this district, and maybe some of you have not seen it, get a copy of that letter. And we don't want to put it out there because we don't want it to become a talking point, but you need that letter in case somebody throws that number out there, and they will throw that number out there. Yes, Vice President. 39. And Dr. Vargas has made the point, and I and others have too, that is not the number for anybody to be proud of. But the fact is, you talk about 30 percentage points, that's a lot of kids flipping their tassel. And we should have an accurate account of the number of kids that are graduating. So no one's popping any champagne bottles and celebrating, but the facts ought to be accurately stated. And this is the second publication of this report that was not accurate. So I want to thank Dr. Vargas and his team for getting right on that. You all know.
Mr. President,
yes.
as a follow-up to that, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Is something going out in terms of a press release regarding that?
Well, some of us
only because even today, this afternoon, there was somebody that was quoting that 9%.
Well, I think I said to the president, I think he needs to put something out.
I think.
And I know that I'm telling folks is not because the other reason why we need to put it out because people like making money off of the 9%.
Well, and Dr. Vargas and we could all talk some more about this.
Poverty pimps. I'm sorry.
But my concern is at this particular point, you may have seen something more recent. Nobody's really been talking about it. We're talking about it now, but you don't want to put kerosene on a fire that is just barely lit. And my suggestion would be that we keep that letter close by us in case somebody brings it up. If they bring it up, then we go at it. But my concern is you put that press release out there and it says 39% is a real number, and people will misconstrue that. What are you trying to say? You're happy about that? I just say, if somebody says it's 9%, like you saw, I would be prepared to say this is, I don't think we should be leading the story that we have, that number's not right and it's only 39%.
So
That's just my thought.
Did they revise their report?
They have not revised the report. This letter that you have comes from the agency that contracted to do the research for the SHOT report. But we're not done with the SHOT Foundation. We're going to continue to talk to them because they should issue some kind of retraction.
And the other point I'll make, not to belabor, Mr. President, because I know it is late and I know folks want to get home and watch
Some people
Chandra Rhimes. How to Get Away with Murder does start at 10, so we might have time to make that.
He got it bad.
The other thing I want to point is that number, just so people can mostly say, oh, Van White made that number up. New York State, 39% black male comes from New York State. Nothing to write home about, but it's important to correct the record. I mean, when we're wrong, we're always beat over the head. So when you want to correct the record. So, but yeah, that 39% number is actually verified by State Education Department.
The winter graduation 2015 was a wonderful ceremony. I had the honor to be there and speak. We talked about, I love music. I talked about Whitney Houston's song Step by Step and how it is all a journey. And it was wonderful to see these kids. And people want to dismiss kids who graduated or students who graduate in 5 years or 6 years. But we had some 5-year graduates, 50 of them. Praise God. Hey, listen, they got across the finish line, and their celebration is no different. Might even be greater than those that made it in 4 years. We had some 6-year graduates, okay? That's all right. And we even had one, check this out, a 7-year graduate. Hey, more power to him, right? That's a powerful testament to stick-to-itiveness, and we should be very proud of that person. And the last thing I wanted to do is I wanted to thank Shanae Lee, who led the reorganization effort, of course, Melissa Campos, who also spearheaded us through this effort. I do want to say, and I don't think the message should be lost, the Board of Education decided to do this because we wanted to lead by example. We wanted it to be known, and we're issuing a press release tomorrow that says the cuts that are going to have to occur should be made as far away from the classroom as possible, and that sometimes reorganization occurs through efficiencies, and we have figured out a way to do what we do efficiently and effectively and at a reduced cost. The clerk, what's the reduced savings from the previous year? What we were budgeted for? $90,000. I say it's a drop in the bucket, but when you add enough drops into the bucket, I see Everton smiling there, you can end up with a very heavy bucket. So that's the goal here. We know that we're not going to close the budget deficit, but we did want people to know, including the folks at 131 West Broad Street, that we appreciate the dilemma that they have in trying to put together a budget that is fiscally sound. So that concludes my report. Now we have to move to the discussion of resolutions. Can I get a motion to discuss resolutions 458 to 479?
Move it. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? There being no discussion, all those in favor of resolutions 458 to 479, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
Yeah, 465, 466.
Madam Clerk, you've recorded that? Okay. Seems to be that the ayes have it. Let's move on to the discussion of resolution 480 to 484. Can I get a motion? Move it, President. Been moved.
Second.
And seconded by Commissioner Evans and Powell. Any discussion? These are additional pay resolutions. Any comments or questions? All those in favor of resolutions 480 to 484 say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No, to all.
Okay. Madam Clerk, you recorded that. Can I get a motion to discuss resolutions 489 to 495, educational facilities?
So moved.
It's been moved by Commissioner Powell and seconded by Commissioner Campos. Any discussion?
What was that number?
489 to 495.
Okay, all right.
We already did, right? Any discussion, comments, questions? There. It has been moved and seconded. All those in favor of resolution 489 to 495 say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mr. President?
Yes, ma'am.
Before we take on the next lot,
Sure.
just as a matter of practice, I've always been more comfortable discussing policy resolutions separate from everything else in the other category. Could we separate 504 and, I'm sorry, 508 and 509?
There's a motion to separate 508 to 509. Is there a second to that motion? Second. All those in favor of separating resolutions 508 to 509, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, let's try 496 to 507. Can I get a motion? It's been moved and seconded? Seconded by?
Second.
Been moved and seconded? Yes.
What were those numbers again?
Well, right now, we're dealing with 496 to 507.
Okay, all right.
All right? And it has been moved and seconded. Any discussion or comments or questions?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Resolution 501. Can someone discuss that? I wasn't really clear about what's going on in Resolution 501. Okay, so I understand this is Commissioner Adams' resolution. So
This,
the resolution that came out of the committee I appointed, the ad hoc committee on Common Core that I appointed 2 years ago and just concluded their work last year. Remember, they did a presentation at ESA, and then we told them to go back and revise the language so that way it could be done in a way that we all could understand it. And this is what came back from the group.
Yeah, Christiana, I think, I'm thinking you could talk about this because I know that Commissioner Adams worked with you on this, particularly some revisions.
Yes, this was a resolution that we worked on to look at the implementation of Common Core and also to look at our curriculum and work collaboratively with stakeholders, RTA, teachers, and the commissioner and the community members to have, so that they could have some input into the decisions when we make decisions about curriculum.
And, you know, this was, at one point, it was going to come up on the agenda. Vice President Elliott and Commissioner Adams withdrew it because there was some concern about the language regarding the instructional council. Mm-hmm. There needed to be some clarity about who was participating. I'm looking at you, Mr. Lopez, and you remember that conversation? Or
Yes.
were you involved in
Yes.
that, or was you, Christiana?
Yes, it was with me.
So it was tweaked a little bit, the language was tweaked a little bit, and it's in its present form. And I assume this is good, you're good with this?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
It gives us an opportunity to collaborate and work together as a team.
All right, any other questions or comments with respect to resolutions 496 to 507? There being no further questions.
Oh, yeah, no,
yes.
I have 502 through 504. I think these are facilities moves, and I just want to be clear on what we are saying. Eventually, 27, which is school 22, is going to be demolished. Is that correct? So I guess nobody's here to answer those questions.
I know, I think 22, no, I don't.
Well, they're going to be moving.
Yeah, but.
We're communicating with the city.
Yeah.
About what they want, what our plans are for the building, because remember, I'm sorry, Mr. President.
No, that's what I was going to say, go ahead.
If I may, remember, the buildings aren't owned by the district, they're owned by the city. So we have to communicate with them that we're leaving, what we're going to do with the equipment that's already in there. Mm-hmm. And then, as part of the conversation, what they end up doing with the building is what their plans are.
So is this this is what's being said in 502? I guess I'm just really unclear about, and then we go to 503. So I'm just not real clear.
Yeah.
And then also 504. So we have the first two resolutions, 502, that speaks to, I guess, discussions. I guess I just want to be clear about what's being said. 502 discusses, talks about discussions or a negotiated facilities agreement, which I'm not clear about. But then 503 and 504 I'm not exactly sure what we're.
I don't know if Christiana can enlighten us, but I know Mike Smith and
He's not
others
here today,
discuss this. I think the layperson's way to describe this is, as Commissioner Cruz has said, we do not own these properties. So the idea is to transition them back to the city and transfer them back to the city. And these resolutions describe that process and authorizes me, I think it references, that I will be allowed to execute such instruments that facilitate that transfer. That's in sum and substance what these documents, is that right, Mr. Lopez? It's essentially what they do. We don't own these buildings, and we don't know. They may be demolished, they may be repurposed, they may be turned them into condominiums, we don't know. Or charter schools may take them over, we don't know. But once we give them over, it's up to the mayor and the city council to determine what will happen next.
Okay. All right.
Any further questions respecting resolutions 496 to 507? There being no more questions or concerns regarding those resolutions?
Oh, I do have one.
Yep, no, that's all right.
What's the qualifications for a record management officer? This is resolution 500. Does this person have to be certified or, state ed approved? Can anybody, can you answer that, Deputy Superintendent?
She's coming.
A records management officer is just someone that each district designates, so that's what this resolution is doing.
So there doesn't need any certification?
There's not a certification, there is training that takes place.
Okay.
Could I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
Is this ordinarily a function that we would designate at the beginning of the year in our organizational meeting? Because it does
can be done that way,
it
yes.
specifically reflects records policy 1120, for example.
It can be done as part of your reorganization. I wasn't here at that time, so it's hard for me to speak to that.
So records management, this person, that covers student records?
Yes.
Employee records?
It's student records, and we are applying for a grant to digitize some of our records.
So it's only student records, it's not employee records?
Yes.
All right,
at this time.
Okay. We need to take a vote with respect to resolutions 496 to 507. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
Yes, Mr. President. Up for 496 through 499. I think 501, 505 and 506. Excuse me, yeah, 505 and 506.
Okay. Madam Clerk, you got that? All right. Can I get a motion to discuss resolutions 508 to 509? It's been moved and seconded by Commissioner Powell.
Sure.
Any discussion or comments or questions regarding resolutions 508 to 509? There being no questions or comments?
Well,
Oops.
yes. So exactly what has been the change in these policies?
Bless you.
Okay, yeah, let me recap that one more time. Resolution 508, the contracting for professional services. The language that was in there included, essentially allowed for an RFP, RFI to be initiated after an existing contract expired, which doesn't make a lot of sense if it's a service that we want, that we need continuous service for. So the new language allows the RFI or RFP process to start before the contract expires, an existing contract expires. That's the sum and substance of that policy change. The other policy, the 5460 concussion management, is a new state law, a state regulation requirement. Interestingly, through our discussion with Mr. Cotto, who was essentially championing this policy, a significant number of our kids who experience concussions do not experience them on district property, but we have to be able to, for instance, things that happen at home, kid gets slammed around by their dad, you name it, the things that happen. But we have to have policies to manage that from a health services standpoint. You know, how are we going to monitor it? Including things like a 504 plan. If someone has had a concussion the day before a test, they're entitled to have a pass on taking that test for a few days until their headache goes away.
State exams, they have a pass?
Well, a 504 plan is something that allows for extenuating circumstances. For instance, a young mother is out on maternity leave when the Regents exam hits, or is having a baby that week. A 504 plan allows for the district to accommodate those students. Same was true with concussions. You don't want to punish a child for things that have happened, whether it's on the sports field, the football field, or it's something that happened at home and they're coming to school with that problem.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions or comments regarding resolutions 508 and 509? There being no further questions or comments, all those in favor of resolutions 508 and 509, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? The ayes have it. Finally, we have resolutions 510 through 513. Can I get a motion to discuss those items?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded.
Second.
Okay, all right. Any discussion or comments? There being no further comments or discussions, all those in favor of resolutions 510 to 513 say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Ayes have it. We've already discussed new business by discussing the professional services contract and the concussion policy.
Mm-hmm.
We have an information item.
Yes, the policy, information item doesn't mean we have to talk about it tonight. But the student records policy, we're recommending an amendment to the policy that responds to the state law from back in June, July, the end of session last year, that specifically, if you recall, data collection systems like In Bloom, New York State, basically said we can opt out of any data gathering that's not specifically required by state law for State Department of Education. So we're adding one rather long sentence that recommends that we do in fact opt out of any commercial data mining. It carves out an exception for BOCES RIC, which stands for Records Regional Information Centers, not because we use RICs. Everybody else in the state who is not of our size uses the BOCES RIC process to consolidate their data and send it on to the state. We're so big that we can accomplish that on our own, but by including that carving that out as an exception, we sort of reserve the right to potentially in some future date change the way we do our reporting to the state and potentially use the RIC.
Commissioner Powell, that requires no action on the part of the board today.
Not today.
Okay.
In fact, it won't be for 2 more months.
All right. I need a motion to go into executive session. It's been moved and seconded by Commissioner Campos. I want to thank Dr. Otua for joining us today. And for those of you who are interested and are not on your way to see Scandal, we are probably going to adjourn from downstairs once we come out of executive session. Good night, everybody.
Do you have a agenda for executive?
No, it's